excited to talk today to Dr. Don Schoendorfer. He gave me the permission to call him Don, so that's what I'm going to call you going forward. And I'm very, very happy to talk to you. I'm so glad that your publicist reached out to me about your story and your book, to be aware of the wonderful ministry that you are doing. And I just wanted to, first of all, welcome you to God Sized Stories. And thank you
Thank you.
for taking the time to talk to me.
It's my pleasure.
Wonderful. I just want to introduce you first to my audience, as some people may not know you, but Dr. Schoendorfer is a biomedical engineer. He's an inventor, an entrepreneur, and a humanitarian. And he was telling me he lives in Santa Ana, California. And we were talking about, I've never been there. That he says it's beautiful, but apparently there's some dry weather now and having some water shortages. As every region has its problems, but it's beautiful there, I'm sure. But Don is armed with an undergraduate degree from Columbia University, and he has a PhD in mechanical engineering from MIT. And he spent nearly 25 years in the medical device industry, designing cutting-edge innovations, resulting in more than 60 patents to his name. It's a super, my daughter, my youngest daughter, she is a little math whiz, and we talk about, she's now a junior in high school, and she's been talking about possibly getting into engineering. And when I got all the information about your life and your book, I was like, Bella, have you thought about, maybe working with medical device engineering? That would be really, really cool. So, but anyway, but Don's humanitarian work is really what we are going to talk about today. And he has just released a new book. It's called, and I have a copy right here. It's called Miracle Wheels: The Story of a Mission to Bring Mobility to the World. And we are going to talk about the story behind Miracle Wheel, which is he has a mission, free wheelchair mission is the nonprofit that he started in 2001. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, and it is a faith-based nonprofit that designs and manufactures cost-efficient, durable wheelchairs for developing countries around the world. So we're going to talk about this amazing ministry, really, that you have, that God puts in your heart, and just I love to interview the people in this podcast. It is amazing how God uses our gifts, no matter like if you think about a medical device engineer, how is he going to use a person like that to bring glory to his kingdom? And your story is going to tell us just that. So I just want to, first of all, start by asking you this question. You've spent most of your professional career as a biomedical engineer, um, and founder of the Free Wheelchair Mission. Tell us about the moment which I started reading your book, and that first introduction of how the idea to start this foundation occurred. It was just heartbreaking. So tell me a little bit about how you came about the idea.
Sure. This is back in 1979. My wife and I are on a vacation to Morocco. We hadn't been there maybe just a few hours, visited the first large city when we crossed from Gibraltar from Spain, and then went to a very old area of this city. Tetuan is a city, and the old area is called the Medina, and that was probably built during the Crusade period of time when the roads are very narrow, dirt, and the houses would have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's very crowded with vendors on either side of this narrow alleyway, and we're just enjoying the smells and the sounds and the colors of everything. And then between the legs of people crawls this woman on the ground, dragging herself on her stomach and literally digging fingernails into the dirt to get traction to pull her legs were just dangling behind her without any muscle strength or anything in them at all. And taking these little steps. I'd say steps, but they're really not. They're just moving forward 6 inches, maybe at a time, and focusing on her hands. And there she was. And then people just sort of stepped over her like she was some kind of rubbish. And the whole thing was just a wow. And what do we do? And then as we sat there and thinking about it, she disappeared down an alley, and that was it. That was this whole thing probably lasted 60 seconds. And there's no place we could find to even buy a wheelchair.
Right.
But that time she was gone anyway. And the fact that I learned later, the reason why people ignore somebody like that is because that's the way life is in many developing countries. You're on your own. And she didn't have any family or relatives or neighbors or friends to take care of her, and she just wanted to cross the road. So, okay. But then, we're just starting our careers and, building a family, and we get on a plane, come back to United States, and I put that image behind me, but every now and then it would resurface, of course, because it's not something you can forget.
No. And it was planted really in your mind. I believe that God wouldn't let it go because of the purpose behind you having to see that horrible scene that I'm sure is just one in many, many, many developing countries. I'm originally from Brazil, and the part of Brazil where I'm from is a little more affluent. But as you go, I'm from the south of Brazil, but even even in the smaller cities, you see a lot. You have those people that are almost like everybody knows them because they are the person without legs sitting on a corner, and they are always there asking for money. And so, as a matter of fact, I just went to Brazil in the summer this year. Spent some time with my mom, and I went downtown to buy some things. And there's this gentleman that I remember from, my goodness, when I lived in Brazil 23 years ago, and he doesn't have legs, and he sits on the floor with a little shoe box beside him, right? And he just lives out of people's goodwill of giving him changes and different things. So it is heartbreaking. And I was reading that today it is estimated that about 75 million people are in that kind of situation in the world. Is that an accurate number?
It has some authority behind it because it comes from the World Health Organization. I know it's bigger than that. It's really hard to do a survey on how many people need a wheelchair when you can't even find them.
Absolutely.
And so
Yes.
this is an estimate, but it's 70. Well, we'll stick with that estimate, 75 million. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have at Free Wheelchair Mission is that, can that be true? I mean, here in the United States, you don't see people needing a wheelchair.
Right.
And how could that be? Well, like you say, most people don't get a chance to see what you saw in Brazil or what I've seen in 94 different countries. There are people that, if it comes to food or a wheelchair, you're going to go for food.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's no medical, there's no governments that are going to take care of you. There's no, there are people that will take care of you. They'll be your wheelchairs.
Wow. Don, tell me about the moment that the lights came on, that you realized God has placed in your heart, in your life. I understand you come from very humble beginnings, and you were able to go to college and become an engineer, eventually a mechanical engineer from MIT, which is very prestigious. And you get into biomedical device engineering. And when is it that the light came on, that you remember that time in 1979 and what God has taught you through this to start your foundation?
I was following the track of a biomedical engineer in the United States and working for medical companies and coming up with ideas and inventions. And I was working for them, and that was fine. I was enjoying myself, but I felt comfortable about solving my own problems, and I always gave God credit for creating the universe, because there's no other explanation in my
Right.
opinion. But I didn't think he had the time to get involved in everybody's life, including mine. So, and then when we have 3 daughters, and we had teenage daughters, and they brought us to our knees. There are issues that were coming up that I didn't have the background to solve, and the only recourse after a few years of trying to solve them was to surrender to God,
Mhm.
and that brought us, my wife and I, back to church. We had drifted away, but then, can we actually surrender this anguish that we're going through? And it takes time to learn how to do that, right? But
Right.
we could. And then we started going to church regularly, and I started getting involved in some mission work, tutoring and mentoring, and students from Central America that have come up to California, but it wasn't highly satisfying for either the students I was helping or me.
Mhm.
And the way I like to sum it up, this happened over the period of many months, but I can sum it up quickly. It's like getting a phone call from God. Uh, and maybe you have. Some people can
Yes.
actually say they've got this phone call, but it was, so what I'm, this is fiction now, but this is a little bit like it was already took months. The phone rings in the middle of the night, you answer the phone, and you just know who it is. And the voice says, "Don, do you know who this is?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And then he said, "Why are you wasting your time?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Why don't you use the gifts I gave you to work to help the kingdom, my kingdom?" And then he hung up. I mean, no, again, it didn't happen that way, but this is how
Right.
I talk
Right.
about it,
I know
because
what you
he
mean.
was dead right. And
Yeah.
God was right. He said, I was born to be a creative engineer, and I'm trying to tutor and mentor people, and I don't have any training in any of those areas. And then all of a sudden, this image from this woman in Morocco comes back to me, and I just start looking into wheelchairs. And that's when I discovered the 75 million. And that's what I discovered, how people, some really fine organization that had already spent 20 years into this, when this was in 1999, had already spent 20 years trying to solve this problem. But they didn't quite have the same approach that I had. Being a biomedical engineer, you know how to do things inexpensively so you can throw them away. And that's what happens in hospitals. Everything gets thrown away when you leave, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so you really think about cost, and the name itself, wheelchair, has the ingredients. That's wheels in a chair. So
Right.
I went to Toys R Us, the local shopping center here, and I see bicycles for sale back then for $60, and they're made in China. And I know enough about manufacturing to know they probably made those wheels for $3 each, and they're
Mhm.
making them by the millions and millions. And then next to Toys R Us is Home Depot, and there's these white resin lawn chairs that are on sale. It's the end of the year. It's in the fall. They're selling it for $4 each. So I get some chairs, I get some bicycles, and now I got for $10. I got two wheels,
Yes.
and a chair.
I
And
actually have
okay,
a
now,
picture right there.
yeah, that's
What
it.
he's talking about in the pic.
And so then you got to connect the two, and that's where you have to get involved in bending steel, and then some welding, and you connect some casters. And so I made a prototype, and I had a chance to make an appointment with the outreach pastor at my church, Mariners Church in California. And he had just come back from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and he was jet lagged. He was tired. He just came in to see me that afternoon, and I show him the wheelchair, and he said, "Don, just 2 days ago, I saw people crawling at the airport
Wow.
before I left," and said, "This is such a great idea. Let's go." And that was a time when he could have totally destroyed my idea, or he could have embraced it, and he did. And so I
Right.
made 100 of these wheelchairs, because I was going to do a clinical trial, which is what I did as a career for medical companies, and I knew how
Mhm.
to prove safety and efficacy, and make a big file of hundreds and hundreds of pages long, and then give them to the FDA, and we would get the approval of a new product. But I could afford only 100, and So I made 100 of these prototype wheelchairs, and they're in the garage for the longest time. And I didn't know what to do with them because I had no knowledge of mission work in developing countries. Finally, I had a chance to bring 4 of them to Chennai, India, with lots of criticism along the way, because, you know, your viewers saw the picture. It doesn't quite look like
Yes.
a wheelchair. It looks like a
Right.
garden chair with wheels. And it doesn't have all the features that a chair would have in the United States, or what we're used to, all the adjustable features. And I said, yeah, I know it doesn't have all these things, and I can't answer any of your other questions about who's going to make them, who's going to give them out, anything else. I just want to prove that this would work. I will publish a paper, and someone else can then take it from there. So I'll give these 100 away. I'll come back a year later. I'll see if the wheels are still on the chairs, and if they're working, I'll write this scientific paper. Well, the very first wheelchair we gave away in Chennai, India. It was a medical mission to do family medicine to people who had probably never seen a doctor before. And we called it a card table clinic, because you'd go out in the middle of nowhere and set up the tables and boxes of all the things the doctors would need, both from India and the people that came with me from the United States. But since I can't practice medicine, all I really was a laborer and moving boxes. But I had these 4 wheelchairs, and they were not looked at with great appreciation from the people from India either.
Wow.
And that was a little sad, but I don't know if you probably have some experience with mission work. You're always tired. You're always running out of stuff to give away. You don't need a new project because you're not even finishing the projects you have, because the need is so great. And it's a very frustrating career sometimes for people. And so you don't really want to have a new idea come. You don't want a person to come in from the United States and say, I got this idea. I want you guys to help me give these chairs away. So I managed to bring a chair on this first card table clinic with me on the bus. And I see some of the first patients are coming down this dirt road, and they're carrying something. And as they get closer, I see it's a boy, and he has cerebral palsy, and I didn't even know what that would look like but he was flailing his arms, flailing his legs, grinding his teeth, drooling, and he was being carried at 100-degree temperature by somebody with 100% humidity, sweating, because they had walked quite a few miles to bring him. And they were going to see these doctors who they would hope somehow would cure this boy's disability of not being able to walk. But they didn't have any place. They weren't quite ready yet for them to see the first doctor. So I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at my wheelchair on the bus, and I'll get the bus. Let's get the wheelchair down and see what happens. And I thought the man would sit in the chair, because I was told it's a man's world in the developing country, and that would be if there's one chair, it would go to the man, right? But no, his mom put the boy in the chair, and it was in the shade, and he was cooling off, and he was not as agitated. And she starts rocking him in the chair, and then she starts doing figure eights, and then she starts going around, just pushing him, and he was starting to calm down. And all of a sudden, all my peers, they look over, because I was often kind of away from them, and they see what had just happened with this wheelchair without a word being said, just lots of smiles. And so they said, well, we better drive these people home, because it's going to be a long path. And even though it'd be a lot easier if they had the wheelchair for the son to sit in. So we drive them to this little village next to a huge rice paddy, and they were all migrant workers. And now I had a translator, so we could get a little bit more information from their lives. And they would make $2 a day each one if they could work, but only one could work, because one had to take care of their son, so they had to take turns. And so they're at a break-even point. They had very little other than just the clothes on their back, and a place to sleep and a place to eat. But Sunday afternoon, we come in with this bus, and they get out, and we have this chair, and the crowd starts around us because this is unusual. And there's 40 people. Some of them have homemade crutches out of limbs of trees that they're using because they had polio. And I'm just enjoying this. I got this clipboard. I'm trying to record information, and I just see this family. They're just so joyful. And all of a sudden, our guide, whose name was Moses, at a Christian mission organization that we were visiting in Chennai, India, he came and said, "Don, we got to leave right away." And I said, "Why? What happened?" He said, "Well, because I didn't remember to knock on the elder of the village's door first. And I needed to get, out of respect, I should have done that. And he just showed up, and we've embarrassed him because he was late to the party, and he doesn't look happy." And I agreed with him. But I said, "Moses, okay, but before we go, I think you need to do your job." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'm the engineer. I brought the wheelchair. You've got a Bible in your pocket. I know you do. So tell them why we're here." And this is a Hindu village, and Moses is a little bit nervous because it's not comfortable for him to preach to Hindus. They'll mock you, or they'll walk away from you. But they're thinking that there's something he's saying that's going to explain why this family is getting this wheelchair. And then we left, but we tried to get out. We were late. We tried to get back on a bus and drive down the dirt road. And the bus driver was very determined to leave quickly. And all the villagers come out and start hammering on the side of the bus.
Oh, wow. They wanted more wheelchairs.
We wouldn't know what they wanted. Our naive thinking was they're going to kidnap us and they're going to hijack, they're going to hold us for ransom because we were out in the middle of nowhere. And then the bus driver didn't want to stop. He maybe was worried too. Anyway, the villagers got in front of the bus, put their hands on the windshield. I said, "You're either going to run over me or you're going to stop." They're emphatic. And we turn around, what's going to happen next? And there comes the mom with 2 glasses of water.
Oh.
And she had to give us something because she realized when we were leaving, we weren't taking a wheelchair with us. We told her it was going to be hers, but when does this happen in her culture? Why does, and it was beyond explanation for her. So then when she saw us leaving, that was all she could give us. The only thing she could afford to give us was water as a gift.
Yeah.
So the next day, the Indian group, the missionaries who didn't really want anything to do with me and my idea of the wheelchair, they drove me around Chennai to show me all the people who needed a wheelchair. And they wanted to be our distribution partners because they saw how the wheelchair opened the door to teach the gospel.
Absolutely.
Which they never could have gotten to that village had it not been for that wheelchair.
Yes. There's so much there because a lot of times we come with the message of the gospel, and but if they are hungry, if they are sick, if they are right, we have to be able to feed them, and that's a way of really opening them up to hear the gospel of salvation. But if they're hungry, if they're sick, if they are in need, a lot of times that's the first door that you open, right, for them to actually stop and listen to you. So it is a tool. So the wheelchair, even though it has brought your wheelchair foundation has brought mobility to a lot of people. Tell me a little bit about how it has been used. I was seeing that you have distributed more since 2001, since this first chairs that you're talking about, 1.3 million wheelchairs to people living with disabilities in 94 developing countries. That is crazy to think about the magnitude of what God did with that lawn chair and some bicycle wheels that you started. So tell me how this has, I can only just tell me a couple of stories of how it's impacted the gospel as well. People have been able to be saved because they were open to hear the story.
Well, because we're a faith-based organization and our supporters are coming from that direction, and that's why they like to help us financially. And we tend to look at missionaries and Christian missionaries in developing countries to do the work for us. And we don't actually give away the wheelchairs ourselves. That's rare when we can be in the field, when I can be in the field. But we've learned how to call them out and vet them and make sure that this is a new idea for them, and they've never given out wheelchairs before, but they saw just what this man Moses saw, that it could open the door. So they got excited about it. And so I think right now it's 83% of our wheelchairs are given to people who can distribution partners who can give a message
Wow.
of where this wheelchair is actually coming from. Because it's
That's
very easy to think it's coming from
incredible.
the mayor of the city or the elder, because they're there when there's a
Mhm.
celebration. When you give away wheelchairs, it's a celebration. It's a very
Yes.
newsworthy event. And it's very easy for them to think, well, it must be from their government, or maybe maybe it's from the United States, who knows where. But our partners say, well, let me tell you where it's from. It's
Mhm.
first of all, God doesn't see you as He doesn't see your disabilities.
Right.
Everything He made is perfect,
Mhm.
and He wants you to understand that it's not a curse, because that's what you've heard all your life, is the
Mhm.
disability is a curse, and therefore you've kind of grown up with a spiritual disability as well as a mobility disability. But we don't believe it's a curse. The partner says we don't believe it's a curse. There's medical explanations for it. But aside of all that, we want you to feel like you're in God's hands when you're in this wheelchair, and we want you to feel He loves you, and this is His love.
Yes. That's so
Um,
beautiful.
Now, you can't really change someone what they've heard all their life in just
Right.
a few sentences, but our wheelchairs are very conspicuous.
Mm.
Bright blue. I mean, the one you had on the cover, that's the first one. We have two models now that are far more adjustable and far more durable,
Right.
and they're designed to stand up to the very crude terrain of a developing country, and they're bright blue. And so where'd you get that wheelchair, old man, or young boy? Where did you get that wheelchair? Well, these people just came and they invited me to come to a place, so the city picked me up and they drove me there, and there were people there and gave me this wheelchair. They just gave it to you? What do you mean they just gave it to you? Well, they did. They just gave it to me. And did they tell you anything? Well, yeah, they did. They did tell me this story about God and that He loves me and that I'm not cursed.
Ah.
And if you're in this, if you have to tell that story once, well, okay, maybe not a big deal. But if you have to tell it every place you go, because everybody wants to know where this wheelchair goes,
Right.
and they don't understand the story, so they want you to tell me that story again, uh,
Right.
it might start to work.
Absolutely.
And then
I
some
am.
of our partners are faith-based, and they may come back. They may have the time to come back, and can we build a ramp so you can get into church? Can we bring you to church? Can we can we have a pastor come and visit you from the local village? Whatever, all those things can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking about this, I just was reminded of the verses on Matthew 24 and 25, where the disciples come to Christ and they ask, like, um, where did we see you hungry and we fed you,
Mm.
right? When he says that um, he said he told them, if you when you feed one of us, when you feed a person, when you love on them, and it does apply to everything, right? Everything
Mhm.
that we do in the name of Christ, because we are His children, we are called to work and to work in His kingdom, right? It is all for Him and it is for His glory. And so I love it. It says it was on Matthew 25:40. Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me, right? Because they had asked, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger, invited you in, or needing clothes and clothe you, or needing a wheelchair and give it a new chair? And He says, whenever you did that, you did it to to one of these, you did it to me. And what a beautiful thing to think that. And you know, when you're telling me the story that they come not just with the wheelchair, but also it is a way of evangelization as well. I thought about Samaritan Spurs, right, with the Operation Christmas Child.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like what they do as well. They invite the families in, and the kids get a gift, but they also get the gospel, understanding that it is a people who love Jesus that are investing in those who need him most, right? Physically as
Yes.
well. And that, like you said, your because it is a faith-based organization, the people who invest in these wheelchairs, they are usually believers as well, who want to be the hands and the feet of Jesus to the world. This is beautiful. So your book is full of your life stories, right? When you from like when you were a boy until now, right? So what encouragement would you like to share to the listeners who want to make their lives matter for God's kingdom? And like
Well,
if they don't know where to start.
um, well, that should be a prayer for sure. Then where do I start? And God again, He's going to give you clues. There's going to be things that happen in your life. You know, there's things that you really are good at, but maybe you haven't had a chance to do those because your job requires you to do something, and maybe you're not as good at doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
But there may be some things you're really good at that you just haven't had a chance to develop. Um, and just be open to hearing His voice. Well, what's He telling you? What is the feeling you get when you walk through a city or walk in a country? Or is He there? Is He talking to you? And again, it's not going to be like my phone call because I made that story up. It's just going to be
No.
things that happen that
Yes.
you understand. And you know, there's people next to you who are trying to do things. They need your help. You don't have to go start something on your own. There's so many nonprofits that are just needing volunteers to do things and
Absolutely. That's
answer
so
the
true.
phone, be a writer,
Yeah.
put together a package, run into the post office. All those little things can.
Absolutely. It
Those are all
takes
things.
everybody. It takes all of those things to be able to make a difference, right? Like nobody can do ministry on their own. You know, you wouldn't have distributed 1.3 million, wheelchairs if it wasn't for all the people that came alongside, some doing small things, some doing bigger things, some giving little, some giving a lot.
Mhm.
And all of that counts and all of that is so helpful. So with that mindset, tell me what's your hope for Miracle Wheels, which, by the way, I have to say, I'm a writer. You were an excellent writer. The book is very grabbing. The very first chapter just really like grabbed my heart. So, um, very excellent book. I'm going to put all this information on my show notes for people, but I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful story. But I want to ask you, what is your prayer, your hope for Miracle Wheels? And what do you want the listeners to take away from reading this book?
Well, you know, the prayer is a long term. I mean, many lifetimes to reach. Of course, we weren't meant to crawl. Humans, God gave us
Right.
the ability to crawl to walk because He wanted us to walk. And there's various things that happen that will take that ability away, and then you lose so much when you can't move. And a wheelchair isn't going to return your ability to walk, but it's going to
Mm-hmm.
give you the freedom. It's going to give you the independence, and it's going to give you the dignity that you may have lost, and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
give you a voice to talk because people in wheelchairs are very silent. They do not have a voice, even in this
Absolutely.
country. They do not have a voice, and
Yeah.
and yet we see people in wheelchairs doing fantastic things with their careers, and
Yes.
it's all very possible. You just have to open those doors. But uh, there's two takeaways. One is a 75 million. Um, if you can believe that, and the
Mm-hmm.
second thing is we can provide a wheelchair, having it manufactured in either China or India, put in a container, shipped 550 at a time to one of the 94 different countries we have worked in. And they'll be given to a distribution partner. The container will be taken off the ship. It'll be unloaded. The wheelchairs will be stored. The partner will go out and find the people who have the wheelchair. They're all matched up, the different sizes of wheelchairs for different people and different needs. They'll get the people in one place. They'll assemble the wheelchair. They'll adjust the chair so that it's as best a fit as they can possibly make. They'll train the family and the individual how to maintain the chair, how to use the chair, how to go downstairs, how to go up a ramp.
Wow.
And we can do all that for $96.
Wow. Really?
And
So 96, a donation of $96 will provide one family with a wheelchair for life. Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
yes.
That's incredible. That's
And
incredible.
it's unfortunately, you'll probably never get a chance to see the person who got that wheelchair. But you can imagine what it would be like if you couldn't walk, just like right now.
Yeah.
Just imagine for a few minutes what it would be like to get to your car if you couldn't
Yeah.
walk, or go to the
Yeah.
bathroom.
I mean, just anything. Exactly.
And then all of a sudden, now you've been living like that all your life. And then all of a sudden, here's this gift that gives you the ability to move by yourself, or if you can't move by yourself because your hands are compromised, you'll have a family member who to move you. I mean, what can I give you for $96 that would change your life?
Absolutely. Wow,
But
that's incredible.
Yes. So those are the two takeaways.
That's wonderful. Well, listen, Don, what a blessing to the kingdom of God. I can only imagine in heaven. I want to be standing there when the Lord tells you, well done, good and faithful servant, because you use the gifts, your story, your background, your studies, everything to say yes to something that seemed impossible. And I know it was a step into the dark as I look at this wheelchair at the cover of your book. Just using the ingenuity of your thinking process and everything to create this, that today just gives mobility to 1.3 million people around the world and counting. So congratulations. And I know that this is, I know that just hearing your heart that you give glory to God about this, but I definitely want to put your website, which I went there. It shows the bright blue wheelchair that he's talking about. That's what today it looks like. And also information for people to know how to partner with you. $100, less than $100 help somebody change the life of someone forever. So I want my listeners to just close your eyes right now and imagine. And maybe some of you are on a wheelchair and you are grateful for it. And you cannot imagine what life would be without it. But imagine you who have two legs and you are going places and you can do whatever you want, even if they hurt sometimes because of arthritis or whatever, but you still can move and go. Imagine not being able to even get up and go to the bathroom on your own. And so if God puts in your heart, just go to this website that's going to be on my show notes and donate $100. That's how, or less if you cannot do that, but consider donating or more, thousands, and also this book is incredible. I am giving away a copy of this book to somebody on my audience. So all you have to do is just like this show, share it, like it on social media, and your name is going to be entering in a drawing for a copy of this beautiful book. So highly recommended. It's all the information is going to be on the show. And Dawn, I just pray that God will continue to open great doors, that you'll be able to see many more millions of people with the wheelchair that you designed.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's been great talking to you, and I think you did a great job of helping me get the story out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. God bless you. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.